Welcome to Let's Talk Ball. I'm Thad Brown along with Carl Jones. Every single week, we break down the X's and the O's, go over the All-22 film, and have a good time talking about Bills football with kind of hardcore football nerds. Carl Jones, not a nerd. He's a former player. I'm the nerd in this conversation. Bills and Titans, Carl. Look, we went into this game thinking Amari Cooper was good and he could help the Bills. You know what happened? Amari Cooper played good and he helped the Bills out. Talk about what you saw from number 18, day one there.
I mean, he was as advertised in terms of the things that the Bills needed. Separation, a guy who can win one-on-one routes. And I got this from Robert Mays from The Athletic. Cooper ran 12 routes. He got 5 targets. So there was clearly a concerted effort to say, hey, when my man is on the field, we're going to get him the rock. Now, I highly doubt he's going to get upper 40% of target share every single time he's on the field when he's running a route. But that goes to show you how highly they think of him as a pass catcher. 2 examples stick out for me. One, the first half where he had an outside leverage or a corner on the outside of him, and he had a fade route, which makes it really hard to get, as you can imagine, run the fade. What Amari Cooper does such a great job at the line of scrimmage. Guy kind of falls a little bit and wins down the line of scrimmage and makes a play. I mean, wins down the field, excuse me. Then in the second half, you remember the slant route where the cornerback kind of gets his hand into Cooper's face mask. The corner's inside of him. Well, that's where Amari Cooper has to go. He does a great job of selling the vertical and then comes back inside despite the personal foul and makes an impressive catch that was behind him. Those 2 plays kind of illustrate the type of player that the Bills needed because they needed a guy who can just win immediately as well, not 15, 20 yards down the field. So his skill set was definitely on notice Sunday afternoon.
That first one you talk about, the fade, the stutter step he makes at the line of scrimmage where he lulled the corner to sleep and then was just gone. Was an elite route run. You know, I think there's going to be a lot of Stephon Diggs comparisons. It's not the same type of route running, but the effectiveness was equal. And then to your point, the slant play, like Cooper doesn't win the route. The corner's in good position, but Cooper still catches the ball, so he wins the play. And like you said, that's what the Bills needed. And one thing I tweeted about in the game, and I think we kind of had an idea this was going to happen, the whole idea everybody eats. They may still try it, but it's kind of going out the window a little bit. And you saw in this game, it was Cooper, it was Dalton Kincaid, it was Khalil Shakir, and then in spots, it was Keon Coleman. And one thing that you think this offense needs to do is maybe get away from everybody eats and just let the guys who deserve to have the meals be the ones at the table in front of the plates.
Yeah, I had a coach who always said this in terms of maybe a game plan, playbook, or even the personnel out there on the field. It's time to trim the fat. It's time to get all the ancillary things that necessarily aren't needed out there and get the stuff that are going to help us win out there. I know when a coach used to tell us, like, you know what, all these exotic blitzes we have, all that stuff we cooked up in the offseason, time to trim the fat. Cover 1, 2, and 3 and a couple dog blitzes. That's what we're going to do. If you're the Bills offense, all the gotta have it routes. I don't know disrespect to Dawson Knox, who I still think is a fine player. We don't need him to run dig routes on 3rd and 8 and go win. I think that you would much rather have a Kincaid or a Shakir in that spot. And the same thing with, once again, no disrespect to Mac Hollins, but I don't want him running double moves routes down the field. Let that be Amari Cooper, who obviously wasn't there 2 weeks ago, but you get the point. Center the offense around those 4. And I think you also have a good point about maybe Keon, he's going to have to earn his spot into that 4th role.
Yeah, Keon Coleman in this game had a great game numbers-wise, 120-something yards on 4 catches. Couple of big plays, but this to me was pretty much the normal Keon Coleman game we've seen all year, where the majority of his routes are run with a corner close enough that they could have fit into a phone booth together. Look, he's just not getting separation. Now, later in the game, when he got lost on a blown coverage was the first big play, and the second big play, and even the catch after that, the 2 catches he had after the Bills were up 17 points already. In both situations, the corner did not jam him. And when he doesn't get jammed at the line of scrimmage and has a freer release, he can make more plays. Shockingly, works for everybody. If you don't get jammed at the line of scrimmage, you're probably going to be able to be open more often. So I think there is hope for Keon. Maybe they move him in the slot a little bit. But bottom line, like you said, if he's going to be in this top 4 or 5, and I think whoever the running back is, James Cook, Ray Davis, Ty Johnson, whatever, would be the 5th top pass catcher. Coleman's got to prove he can win a little more often than he's winning now. At least he's proven that when he does win, he can turn it into a big play. But the other thing, too, is he's going to get a little bit of a borderline red shirt with this because the Bills spent so much draft capital on him as a high 2nd-round pick. He will get a lot of opportunities to prove he can belong and to develop because there are long-term benefits from that. But I agree with you on the trim the fat point. I want to go Kincaid, Shakir, Cooper being the primary four. And then if Keon proves he can either A, continue to be productive, or B, get open more, I'm fine with that too. But the whole idea of everybody eats, where it's like, look at Josh had 10 receivers today. I think we got to be done with that.
Yeah, I don't think this is a family with like 9 kids and a couple of aunties and uncles in the house. We got to feed everybody. I think it's a normal nuclear family, a couple kids and some parents in the house. That's all you need to take care of. I think that's what should be Joe Brady's focus going forward.
At the running back position, Ray Davis didn't get a lot of carries, but when he was in, I thought he ran strong again. The touchdown run, even though, I don't know how much Tennessee was dialed in at that point of the game, still a good run. Question for you. I thought James Cook still looked a little bit banged up. I mean, I might be extrapolating because the performance wasn't great. I thought like last week, Khalil Shakir was gutting it out against the Jets. Maybe the same situation with James Cook. Give me your take on the two running backs, just general impression.
One, I love that Ray Davis always falls forward. As a defensive back, you hate it, but now that I don't have a helmet on anymore, bon appetit, love that. Saw that especially on the catch he caught in the flat. But then also with James Cook, he wasn't a liability out there, but some of the maybe jump cuts that he's so accustomed to making week in and week out weren't there, especially with all the zone stuff and duo stuff that they were doing last week. So I think he'll get healthier, obviously, as all injuries are going forward. But shout out to him for whatever he's battling, gutting through it Sunday afternoon.
I thought his vision wasn't super good either. This is a guy that I think usually does a good job of finding the right place to go. Not as good, not terrible, but definitely not his best day ever. Up front, I just want to mention real quick, the O-line in general was good. Look, Jeffrey Simmons and Devontae Sweat, those guys are good, and they played good. There were multiple plays where you just looked at 93 and 98 and said, that's a solid football player. I think Connor McGovern got used as a tackling dummy on one play. But for the most part, the Bills' offensive line was fine. I want to single out Osiris Torrance because we talked about him quite a bit as a guy who's been a problem. I thought he was pretty good in this game. Not perfect, but he had a couple good one-on-one blocks with Simmons, a couple good run blocks. This I thought was his best game of the season. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball. And Carl, to me, the star was Greg Rousseau. Look, he doesn't always get a ton of sacks. He's had 1.5 sack since the 3-sack season opener. But against Houston, he took advantage of a bad right tackle with multiple pressures. Against Tennessee in this game, the Titans had a starting tackle, Petit Freer, I think is how you pronounce his last name. He got benched before this game. The guy who replaced him got hurt 3 plays in. They put Petit Freer back in, and Rousseau abused him for 6 quarterback hits, which was the most that any players had in the NFL all year long. Look, again, Rousseau is not a guy that I think might ever really be a consistent 10-sack-a-year player, but he is impacting the game, Carl. That might be all you need.
Yeah, I don't know if he'll ever be the S-tier guys. We're talking about Myles Garrett, Parsons, Watt, Bosa. Like, I don't think that's ever in his cards. But what he did on Sunday against the Titans is what a good player is supposed to do against someone who is not as good as him. Point blank, period. I know a lot of time you hear the phrases, they're playing with their fool. They're playing down to their competition. Well, good players dominate those in front of them. And that's what he did. I mean, there were a couple players where I'm like, boy, it looked like the tackle's back there on ice. Like, he just out there at his mercy, like, oh, he praying the quarterback. Like, you just know, he like, get rid of the ball, get rid of the ball. I got no hope, I got no hope. Like, that's kind of how it looked on a couple of snaps. So, once again, it's not his fault because, like, the schedule is the schedule. I just want to see some of this stuff against more formidable foes on the schedule. For all of Seattle's strengths, the offensive line isn't great either, so he might get another opportunity to feast on the West Coast this week. But there's some teams on the schedule coming up, notably Kansas City in a few weeks, who you can start to stack up and see how much growth has he really had this season.
And that's where they're going to need that growth. You can beat Tennessee all the live long day. In Buffalo, it matters who you beat in January. You ain't seeing the Titans in January. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. One thing I do want to say about Rousseau, though, it's more than just he's a better athlete against a tackle. I saw a technique that felt like he was comfortable with. Anytime Greg Rousseau was able to reach out and get his hand on the inside shoulder of the tackle, he's able to get control of that offensive tackle and just bull him into the quarterback. And it was over and over that move. If he gets the inside shoulder first, he's so long and so strong that it may not be any tackle in the league that can handle it when he gets that move. And against lesser players, he can hit the move more often. So it's not just, he's out there running willy-nilly and winning. There's a thing that he's doing detail-wise that he sees that he's winning on and going back to over and over. And to me, that was the most encouraging part. Let's talk about the pass defense a little bit, because you and I both noticed in the first half, Mason Rudolph, everybody noticed Mason Rudolph having success, shockingly somehow because it's Mason Rudolph. But what he was doing in the first half, he was unafraid to hit small windows in the zone. He was doing it over and over. I mean, there were Bills defenders standing next to a receiver, watching the ball whiz past them for 5-10 yard gains. However, in the second half, Carl, the Bills did something a whole lot different.
Yeah, they started saying, all right, we tired of all this zone, every snap stuff, especially spot drop zones where they're just going to a spot on the field and dropping. Second half, they're like, listen, mano, Benford against Ridley, Tarrant against Boyd. I don't even know if D-Hop played a lot in the second half. That's a whole different limit they got going on there in Nashville. But regardless, mano, a lot of man coverage, and they forced Mason Rudolph to be accurate, down in and down out. You saw a couple throws where a Titan was open. But if you're a Bills, if you're Bobby Babbage and Sean McDermott, we're daring Mason Rudolph to be accurate 15, 20 yards down the field up against one of our better corners, or all of our corners, to be frank there. And in the first half, they were daring him to be great up here. And for all of Mason Rudolph's maybe weaknesses, he's been a vet in this league for a pretty long time. So he knows coverages and where guys are supposed to be. It's a different ask when you ask that quarterback who's a tad less than to be accurate down in and down out. And that was cool to see, because the Bills don't play a ton of man. And that's something that a nice change up that I think will help them out going forward against some of the better quarterbacks in the league. Because if you can apply that same style of defense against your Joe Burrows, your Patrick Mahomes, your Lamar Jacksons, then you're dangerous, because now you can throw change ups and curveballs at a defenses, because we know they can play zone. But if you can master in some man too, that's how the Chiefs are so darn good every single year in January.
And while the quarterback wasn't very good, this was a good receiving core. At least, look, it was a good receiving core in 2020. They're still pretty decent right now. But Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, and Tyler Boyd, this isn't, the three guys that the Patriots might run at you, who are all below average receivers. So there was a lot of second half Titans offensive plays where you look downfield and everybody was covered. The Bills had a lot of wins man on man. I agree with you. I think it's something the Bills can go back to. Now, like we said, Tennessee, no bueno on offense. And I mean, they did some dumb stuff. If you all go to my Twitter feed, ThadBrown7, there's a play where the Titans had a great pull block. Unfortunately, the pull block is an offensive lineman blocking his own man. The one that really got me was the great fourth down stop the Bills had in the first half, included a third down stop too. And on that play, Mason Rudolph lines up under the guard to kind of try and throw the Bills a little bit. Now, if you're going to do that, I think you're going to snap it quicker. And the Titans didn't give the Bills time to kind of, that they're doing something weird because the quarterback's over here. But whatever, I'm fine with throwing a wrinkle at that, depending on, I don't know how many times the Titans have done it before the game. I'm assuming never before. The thing that drove me mad is, someone who watches football, is that if you put the quarterback behind the guard, you cannot run the play right at the quarterback. He's not blocking anybody. He's just going to be in the way. And shockingly, he was. And look, credit to the Bills. There's penetration. There's guys making good plays. But if you're going to run a short yardage play with the quarterback in the hole, it ain't working. And poor Tony Pollard gets the direct snap, and you see him looking and, what am I going to do now? And that was, a part of this. I think big picture, like we started with, the Bills had the better men on the field. They also had the better men up in the booth, even though I thought Brian Callahan drew up some good stuff early too.
Yeah, we spoke about this after the game. It seemed like the Titans kind of ran out of talent, truthfully. Like, it's kind of how it worked out. And you alluded to the coaching staff. No, listen, Senior Callahan, the father, was the Browns offensive line coach for many years, and he was excellent in that regard. So I don't want to test his mental fortitude as a great offensive line coach and play designer for the run game. But boy, when I saw that, when I watched it back, I skipped past it so fast because I did not want to throw up, because it made zero sense. It kind of looked like Tony Pollard was in the backyard a little bit, like, not backyard, like Pee Wee. You ever seen like a Pee Wee play where you just get the best player of your ball and say, go make something happen? Well, Tony Pollard's not Christian McCaffrey, and this is also the NFL where you just can't make stuff happen. So, yeah, listen, the Bills did a ton of good, but some caveats with the fact that that Tennessee team is competing for ping pong balls in April at this point.
Yeah, they're gonna pick really high. And look, this was, I don't know if they do this all the time. This game to me was the kind of game where you wonder if a coaching staff should come back, and they're in year one there too. So one more thing I want to get to. We talked last week a lot about Taylor Rapp's good game against the Jets. And I asked you at the end, hey, is safety kind of soft? Do we feel good about it? and you were like, hold up, I want to see more. You know, it's like you said, when you do it once, you prove you can do it, but you got to do it over and over. The Titans early in this game, part of what I thought they did well was take advantage of guys who had their eyes in the wrong place. Dorian Williams is a guy, we've seen it before. Hasn't happened a lot this year, but he wasn't very good. But to me, number 9, Taylor Rapp, was right at the top of the list of being in the wrong place at the wrong time over and over in the first half.
Man, that same tight end little leak to the flat where block down, escape to the flat, or another guy coming across the field, inserting in. It's always seemed like he was the player who was in the wrong spot. And also, now that I think about it, in maybe the first or second drive, when they were backed up, Damar Hamlin's eyes were in the wrong place, where he came all the way up. It looked like he was going to the quarterback. And I'm like, buddy, there's a guy running right past you.
Mm-hmm.
Dorian eventually made the tackle down the sidelines. But yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer in it. You can do it once, you can do it again. But there's a consistency thing with that. And you don't want to be occasionally, you want to be consistently good, not occasionally great. So right now, there's some teeter-tottering going on with that. I know the Bills want to even that out going forward, especially from the play for number 9.
Yeah, it got glossed over a little bit because the final score was so big and the second half was so good. The defense did play very well in the second half, but you know, it felt like the Titans had found something they wanted to, they could comfortably exploit, and they just went back to it over and over. You don't see that in Bills defenses too often, where there's a weakness that just gets, you know, outside of injuries, where it just gets, you know, like banged on the drum over and over and over. And that's what was happening early in this game. Before we get done, a couple things. I want a couple shout outs here. Spencer Brown and Mac Hollins, 2 guys that had double blocks in this game. Spencer Brown had it on the long Khalil Shakir swing pass, went for 20. He rolled over literally a corner at the point of attack and then stayed with the play, went down, got another guy. And then the last offensive play of the game, the Ray Davis touchdown, it's basically one of those plays where a team is crowding the line of scrimmage, trying to stop the run. You talk about it all the time, get the corner of the run fit. Well, they did that. Ray Davis went through a block, but Mac Hollins, after blocking his man at the line of scrimmage, saw that Ray Davis was free, went down and blocked another guy. 2-man blocks. I love that stuff, man, because not only do you got to be good as a blocker, you got to be into the game and pay attention to what's going on. And those 2 guys both did it in this game. Anything else from you, Carl, before we shut it down here?
I know Christian Benford. We talk about him a lot. Just another great game from him. I wish he can get this the stat for the pick that Damar Hamlin got. No disrespect to Damar Hamlin.
That was his play, though. Yeah.
His play phenomenal, just knowing down and distance. The Bills' corners just play with such detail. When you watch some of the other teams in the league, you're like, boy, I think you take for granted sometimes what Sean McDermott and Bobby Babbage can do on the back end. I'm watching that Ravens-Bucks game. I'm like, there are a lot of corners who are just like nowhere near, like y'all covering grass. What are we doing here? So I just want to give Christian Benford his flowers for once again, for like he's done the first 6 weeks of the year, playing outstanding.
All right, as always, you can check out Let's Talk Ball at RochesterFirst.com on WIVB.com. If you go to RochesterFirst.com, click on sports, you can find us on the 8 Sports Extra tab. You can also find us on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Next week, Bills and Seahawks. Unfortunately, I don't know if they're going to get DK Metcalf. You talk about how good the corners are. Those corners and Taron Johnson against those 3 receivers would be awesome. We'll see what happens. Either way, though, Carl and I will be here breaking it down. Thanks for watching and listening to Let's Talk Ball. We'll see you next week.